Okay, guys, please turn your cameras on if you haven't already, and we can start. Okay, so all right. So today we're gonna be looking at the last task for the speaking section. So remember that the speaking section has 4 tasks, right? We have seen the first one, which was the independent one. By the way, it has 1 independent and 3 integrated tasks. Remember, so speaking section 4 tasks. The first one is the independent one, the one that we have seen at the beginning. And it was the one where you remember you just had to, they gave you the question and you just have to talk for like 45 seconds, but you didn't have to read or listen to anything. You know, that's why it was an independent question. It was a familiar topic, by the way. Now, question 2 or task 2 was about the campus announcement. So you had to read an announcement and listen to a conversation and summarize everything. And the previous one, the one that we have seen last class, was task 3, which was the one about, it was an academic one already. And in that one, you needed to read a short text and then listen to a lecture, an academic lecture on an academic topic. And then you needed to speak for 60 seconds. Remember, you had like psychology, biology, business topics. So that was task 3. And now today, finally, we're going to be looking at the task 1, task 4, which is as well integrated. And yeah, it's also academic. So to be honest, I would say that this is kind of the same as question 3. So it's pretty similar to question 3. The only big difference that you will find is that in this case, you don't have to read anything anymore. So all you need to do is listen to a lecture, listen to something, and then you get to speak. So some people say it's easier, and I actually do believe that. I think it's the easiest. Well, it's easier than question 3 at least, because you don't have to make so many connections anymore. Remember that in question 3, you needed to connect everything. And in question 2 as well, you need to say, like, the university says this, but the student says that. And in question 3, you needed to explain and everything. But in this one, you just have the listening. So you don't have to worry about anything else, So in that way, it is easier. But, it depends on the way you see it. Okay. So, all right. So you will listen to an academic lecture for that lasts approximately 3 minutes, I think. And then you will get 30 seconds to prepare your response and 60 seconds to speak or deliver your response. So that's how the structure is. That's how it works, technically speaking. So any questions so far? Lecture, and you speak for 60 seconds. Okay. Now the topics that you will find are the same, exactly the same as in question 3. So that's why I say it's really similar. So you can have psychology topics, biology or business topics. If it's psychology, it's always the easiest one. It's about our mind and how it works and everything we saw in question 3. If it's biology and it's about animals and plants, or if it's business, it's usually marketing and advertising and those kinds of things. Okay, so it's still the same. I would say that the most common ones here, usually like the 3 of them, but there are more biology topics than I have seen in question 3. So yeah. Now the structure of the lecture, the content, I think this is when it gets a bit different. So how in question 3 you had a reading at the beginning? So in question 3, first you needed to read something, the definition, if you remember, and then you needed to listen to 2 or 1 example, remember? So this is still very similar, but since you don't have the reading anymore, you will have like a short introduction, like what you had in the reading, you will have it in the lecture at the beginning. So you will have like an intro to the topic. Basically, the professor is speaking for like 30, even more. But okay, so, the professor gets to the class and they'll be like, hi class, today we're going to be looking at, and you have a topic in there. Let's say it's pollution. Let's say your topic here is pollution. So today we're going to be looking at pollution and blah, blah, blah. So that introduction, sometimes you will have a definition as well, like what pollution is or what pollution means, or something general, like when we started polluting the earth, or I don't know. But believe me, I don't think that's that important. So I wouldn't worry too much about the introduction. So that's not that important. You don't have to catch any definitions in here or anything, not even the topic, if I'm being brutally honest, because the topic is usually in the question. So the introduction is not that useful, to be honest. Now, when it gets interesting and when you have to take notes and be alert is when you get to the subtopics. So in this case, in this question, you will always, no matter what, have two subtopics. So it doesn't matter what, like in what area the topic is, you will always have two subtopics. So the topic, whatever it is, pollution, let's say, will be broken down into two subtopics. Now, this could be anything you can think of. It could be, if we're talking about pollution, it could be two types of pollution, like water contamination and air pollution. Or it could be two definitions of pollution, like the narrow definition and the broad definition. Or it could be two effects of pollution, like animals dying and health issues. Or it could be two causes of pollution, if you want, like factories and cars, I don't know. So it could be anything, but it's obviously related to the topic, Okay. Now, another thing that you guys want to know here is that the subtopics are always terms. So they're like very specific words that you have to remember. You have no other choice. So remember how in task 3 I said, read the title, that's a term, it's a very specific word that you need to mention in your response. So in this case, you don't have a title, you don't have a topic, but in the subtopics, you will have those words. So these terms, you gotta remember them, okay? You gotta make sure that you take notes on that, you know how they are or what they are, and that you mention them in your response. Now, after the terms are introduced, you may have a definition, like water contamination, and then you have a definition of what water contamination is. Maybe it's when water is polluted, I don't know. But you will sometimes have that, like short definitions on the terms. And then the professor will get a bit more specific, a bit more in depth, and provide examples. So if you have like water contamination, one type of pollution, maybe the professor will mention a specific river in a specific place. So the professor will be like, so there's this river called in Italy that has been polluted since 1993, I don't know. So you have like very specific information in here. And the same in the second one, okay? So it's always like that. A short introduction to the topic, the relationship with the subtopics, which would be basically how the topics are connected to the subtopics. Like we will look at pollution, which is this and this and that, and two types of pollution. Then you have the first one, water contamination, a definition, which is this and this and that, and an example. For instance, there's this river in Italy, blah, blah, blah. Then you have another one. Moving on, we are also going to look at, I don't know, air pollution, which is, I don't know. And for instance, maybe they mentioned chemicals or gases, I don't know, what have you. But that's pretty much it, okay? So it would look like this. Topic, relationship with the subtopics, which is, we're going to see this with an example. And subtopic 1, details, subtopic 2, and details. So it's always like this, it never changes. And I know that right now it may look a bit ambiguous, but you will see when we get to the example, you will know what I mean. But is it okay so far? Any questions? about the structure of the lecture? Okay, great. So now, okay, some tips I can give you. So the first one related to the question. The question is always the same, by the way. The question is this one. Using the points and examples from the lecture, explain, and then you have the topic. So that topic in there is going to be of great help. Since you have that in the question, it means that you don't have to worry that much about understanding or knowing how to summarize and compress the whole lecture into one sentence, because it will be in the question. So the tip I could give you is just read the question or listen to it because it will be out loud, and pay attention to the way that the speaker summarizes the topic. You can for sure just repeat whatever it is that you have in the question. So pay attention to the question, basically. Now, another tip, remember that you're reporting, you're summarizing everything. These are not your ideas. So you cannot really explain without giving credit to the professor, So if you're like, okay, so water, I don't know, pollution is this and this and that, and you have 2 types and you have 2 effects and this and this and that. So if you do that, then they're gonna be taking some points of you. So you need to make sure that you report. You go like, according to the professor, this and this, or the professor talks about water contamination, which is, or the professor mentions or provides this example, the lecture. You have to use those reporting verbs. You just have to think like you're a news reporter that's reporting what someone else said. So that's the way to think. Now, what else? Okay. The lectures have a structure very similar to written paragraphs, which means that you can always just pay attention to transitions, Okay, give me a sec, please. Okay, so obviously, since it's a lecture and you have these subtopics and everything, the professor will use some transitions. So you can pay attention to them in order to, identify where everything is. So something like, first, we will look at this, or in addition, let's look at, or moving on, or take this as an example, or for example, or to illustrate. So just pay attention to those transitions in order to know how the lecture is structured. I'm not gonna lie, I think the biggest problem here is time for almost everyone. So, the lecture is about 2 or 3 minutes long, and you have to summarize all that in 1 minute. So of course, you're gonna have to leave some things behind. There's no other way, you cannot, mention everything and cover everything. So you need to prioritize. You need to have your priorities, understand what's important, what information is relevant, and what information is not that much. So if I don't know, out of the things that I said, I think that the most important information here is this one, like the terms and the definitions. So the topic is in the question, not important. The details, they are fine, they're there, but I wouldn't worry that much. If you mention like 1 or 2 out of 5 or 6 that you have in there, it's okay. Or if you just make like a quick reference, like we're gonna see how to do that with an example, but it's not that important. So the most important part really is that you understand, that you catch those terms, and if you can, how they are explained, so how the professor explains this term. So that's like the most important information. Don't try to speak so fast, because that's something that I have noticed in this task. Since you don't have that much time, some people try to hurry up and do it in like at, I don't know, ×2 speed. So try not to do that. Just speak at your normal speed and speak with enthusiasm, like you were super excited about the topic. So yeah, those are just like some general tips. So any questions so far before we get to the example? Okay, so now let's see how this actually is. We're gonna listen to this. Please get a pen and a piece of paper if you don't have one already. And make sure to take notes. Now, what I want you to take notes on is this, so you want to understand what the topic is, aka the question. So just pay attention to the question, the subtopics mainly. And if you're able to understand the examples, like the details that the professor presents, then that will be good as well. So let's listen to it.
Listen to part of a lecture in a business class.
If a consumer has to choose between two products, what determines the choice? Assume that someone, a purchaser, is choosing between two products that cost the same, okay? If people have a choice between two identically priced products, which one will they choose? They choose the one they think is of higher quality, of course. But what does it mean for a product to be a high-quality product? Well, business analysts usually speak of two major factors of quality. One factor is reliability, and the other is what we call features. So reliability. What's reliability? Well, a product is reliable if it works the way we expect it to work, if it can go a reasonable amount of time without needing repairs. If a product, a car for example, doesn't work the way it should and needs repairs too soon, we say it's unreliable. So product reliability means basically the absence of defects or problems that you weren't expecting. It used to be that when people thought about product quality, they thought mainly about reliability. Today, it's different. People do still care about reliability, don't get me wrong. It's just that manufacturing standards are now so high that, we'll take cars for example, today. Today's cars are very reliable. So reliability is important, but it's not going to be the deciding factor. So if reliability isn't the deciding factor anymore, what is? Features, all those extras, the things a product has that aren't really necessary but that make it easier to use or that make it cool. For example, new cars today are loaded with features like electric windows, sunroofs, air conditioning, stereos, and so forth. When people are comparing products today, they look at features because reliability is pretty much equal across the board. And that's why manufacturers include so many features in their products.
Using points and examples from the lecture, explain the two major factors of product quality and how their role in consumer decision-making has changed.
Okay. So how was it, guys? How are you feeling? Do you think it was easy to understand? To take notes on? Yeah, right? Kind of. Okay. So let's talk about it. So first of all, can anybody tell me what the topic was? What was the lecture about?
Deciding factors.
Good. The deciding factors. Okay, of what?
For choosing a product.
When purchasing a product. Good. Okay, so by the way, here's another tip. So, okay, so word choice also matters in this task, especially in this task. So you guys are gonna see a lot of business tasks, probably psychology and biology as well. But in biology, there's not much that you can do. In psychology, maybe there are some words that you can check out. But in business, there are some really good words that you can use. So in your response, for instance, if you say something like, the lecture is about how people decide or when they buy things, and that's okay, it's what the lecture was about. But if you, instead of saying that, you say something like, so the lecture is about how customers decide when purchasing a product, instead of saying when buying a thing, and so instead of saying people, you say customers. Instead of saying buying, you say purchasing. or instead of saying a thing, you say a product. So that makes a difference. So try to look for some words, try to check out some business words that you will find in this business tasks here. Okay, so great. All right, so the deciding factors when purchasing a product. Okay, what else? What else was the lecture about? Anybody else has something different maybe?
Quality factors.
Good, quality factors. That's good. And yes, so yeah, you're right. It was about quality, and it was also about how customers make their decisions, I remember in the question, the specific term they use is consumer decision making, So that's something that you can repeat in your response. So you can for sure say the lecture is about consumer decision making and the two major quality factors, so that's something you can do. Okay. Now, I like that you have already identified the relationship with the subtopics. So this word here that you're using, factors, that's it. That's what I mean with relationship with subtopics. Okay, but let's leave it there for a while. Let's talk about the subtopics now. So, do you guys have it? Can anybody tell me what the first subtopic was?
Reliability.
Good, reliability. Perfect. And what about the second one?
Features.
Features. Awesome. Okay. So as you can see, it's a one-word term, a very specific concept that you have to remember, reliability and features. You cannot change that. Now, when I say the relationship, is this what I mean? What does reliability have to do with quality, or with how consumers make their decisions, or what does features have to do with that? How is this connected to that? And that's this word that you have in here, factors, because reliability and features are two factors that make up quality or that influence a consumer's decision. So that's what I mean, when I say the relationship with these topics. Now, it's not always going to be like this. Sometimes you have two types of quality, or two definitions of quality, or two two ways in which you can, I don't know, maybe two examples of quality, but it could be anything really. So try to catch that word. And it was also in the question, by the way. So that's a good one. Okay. Remember I said sometimes you have definitions here? Like, not sometimes, like usually you have definitions in there. So what's reliability? Do we have any definition for that?
It's the absence of defects.
Good, that's it. The absence of defects. All right. Okay, anything else? Anybody wants to add?
When a product works the way it is supposed to.
Good. When a product works the way it's supposed to, the way you expect it to work. Good. All right. Now, what about the details? So the examples. How does the professor illustrate this concept of reliability? What example does he provide? Or I think it's a she, sorry. So what example does she provide?
A car. Cars nowadays are very reliable
Yes, they're reliable. Okay. And how so? Why? Why are they reliable?
because they can endure high amounts of time without the need of maintenance.
Good. Yes. So you basically, it lasts. You don't have to take it to the mechanics or to take it to have any repairs in it for a reasonable amount of time. Okay, so they're reliable and they work the way you expect them to work. All right. Now, what about features? What's features? What's the definition of features?
anything that makes a product more appealing or cool or enjoyable.
Good. Makes a product more appealing. I like that. Or enjoyable, yes, or attractive for the customer in general. So yes, anything else for features?
Maybe makes it easier to use.
Okay, yes, more appealing and easier to use. It's not all about the looks. Yeah, fine. Okay, so yeah, those extra characteristics that make them appealing and make them easier to use. Okay, in the details, it's about cars as well, but what about them? What examples do we have?
The cars
Electric
have
windows.
air condition and stereo.
Good, air conditioning and stereos. Perfect. So as you can see, you have like 3 examples, maybe more, I don't know. But as long as you mention like 1 or 2, it's fine, you know? So in your response, you can say something like the professor talks about features, which are the characteristics that make a product appealing and easier to use. And you can just say, you know, such as electric windows. So you don't really have to mention them all. All right. Okay, anything else anybody wants to add? Or any questions about the sample? Okay, good. So now the template and the response. So basically what you need to do is just summarize everything, and the structure that you're going to keep needs to be the same one that the professor used. You know, so you're going to go in the same order. It's just that you like, it's not like reported speech, but you're just going to report everything in the same order. So you need to have an introduction. Now, believe me when I say this, the introduction is not that important. So it's kind of like in question 3 or in question 2, where you needed to hurry up at the beginning so that you have time at the end. So it's the same in here. Just try to make it like at most 15 or 20 seconds at most, and you'll be fine. So sometimes, I'm not gonna lie, the professor talks like about 40 seconds at the beginning for the introduction. It gives, you know, they give context and even examples at the beginning, but try not to worry so much about that. It's not important. So as long as you just mention what the topic is in general, and that, then you're gonna be okay. So the most important part here in the response is always gonna be the 2 subtopics. So you gotta focus on them. You gotta have more time there to explain and elaborate. So at the beginning, just try to hurry up. Now, what you need to have in your intro is basically, you know, the topic and the relationship with the subtopics. So you can say something like, the lecture is about, I don't know, the deciding factors when purchasing a product and quality, or the lecture is about quality and consumer decision making. I'm just repeating the question, you know, and that's it. Then you can have a transition, something like, after introducing the topic. So this is like, you're saying that the professor has an intro, you know, that the professor gives context and talks about the topic at the beginning, because sometimes the professor will do that, as I was saying. So in order not to repeat or summarize or focus on that, you just say, after introducing the topic, you know, with all the things that they say, the professor features 2, because that's the important part. So you tell me the relationship. So 2 factors of quality, or 2 ways in which a consumer's decision is influenced. I don't know. So you just move on to the subtopics already. And then you need to use these transitions, like first, or to begin with, to start. The lecture describes, and here you have the first term, reliability, which is, and then you tell me the definition, you know, which is the absence of defects, or when a product works the way it's supposed to work, and that's it. And then you tell me, for instance, the professor mentions how cars that last a reasonable amount of time without needing maintenance or without needing repairs too soon are said to be reliable. and then you say, then the professor goes on to explain, and in the second one, features, which are the characteristics, the extra things that a product may have that make them appealing for the customer or attractive and easier to use. And then you tell me the details. Like, to illustrate, she mentions how cars that are always reliable nowadays tend to have these electric windows or air conditioning or all of those extra things to attract the consumer's attention, or how manufacturers are competing now to add these extra features to their cars. I don't know. So you just explain what the example is. And that's it, that's pretty much it. So you have an intro and you have the two subtopics. The conclusion is not necessary. You don't have to have one. And I wouldn't suggest you try to do one because you don't have that much time. Believe me, I think this one is time flies when you're in this task. It really is a problem. So no conclusion, but just try to mention this, the subtopics, the topic, and the details if you can. So is that okay? Any questions? No questions? Okay, so we have time. We're gonna do one more. If we can, we're gonna do two more. So let's do a psychology one. Let's see how it works. And you guys are gonna try. So let's see. Okay, let's listen to this. Don't forget to take notes. You know what you're looking for. Let's see.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a psychology class.
When people are in difficult situations, sometimes they experience feelings of helplessness or psychological pain. So what do? They unconsciously use strategies called defense mechanisms to protect themselves psychologically from their painful emotions. Let's say a woman has a pet dog. She's had this dog for a long time, and he's kept her company and guarded her for years. But one day he runs away. This woman looks everywhere and asks other people if they've seen her dog, but she just can't find him. Now, she feels helpless and sad because she misses her dog. So she'll unconsciously find ways to deal with her painful feelings. One defense mechanism she might use is fantasy. Her imagination. So instead of just helpless and sad about her lost
Excuse me,
dog,
Andrea.
she invents a
I
happy
think
story
there's a
in her
problem with
mind.
audio.
She might imagine that a family found
there?
him. And
Yeah? How so? Is it cutting off? Yeah?
Yes, it's cutting off.
Okay,
Maybe
let
it's
me,
internet connection or something.
yeah, maybe it is. Let me try to fix it.
I saw your faces, so I knew it wasn't just me.
Okay, I'm sorry for that. Let me try to fix it. Okay, so I'm gonna try to play it again. Let me know if it's better or if you can hear now. And if not, then maybe I can send you the link, but let's try one more time. So here.
Now listen to part of a lecture in a psychology class.
when people are in difficult situations, sometimes they experience feelings of helplessness or psychological pain. So what do? They unconsciously use strategies called defense mechanisms to protect themselves psychologically from their painful emotions. Let's say a woman has a pet dog. She's had this dog for a long time, and he's kept her company and guarded her for years. But one day he runs away. This woman looks everywhere and asks other people if they've seen her dog, but she just can't find him. Now, she feels helpless and sad because she misses her dog, so she'll unconsciously find ways to deal with her painful feelings. One defense mechanism she might use is fantasy. With fantasy, the woman uses her imagination. So, instead of just feeling helpless and sad about her lost dog, she invents a happy story in her mind. She might imagine that a nice family found him and feeds him, and that he's really happy with them. She'll picture the dog playing, running around, having fun. Because of this fantasy, she doesn't have to feel sad about her dog running away. It's a fantasy. It's not real, but it keeps her pain away. Another defense mechanism she might use is what we call sublimation. Sublimation is different from fantasy because sublimation isn't about pretending. It's about turning negative emotions into something useful, practical. So the woman might start a dog training school. That way, by training dogs, perhaps she can help prevent other people's dogs from running away like hers did. In other words, with sublimation as a defense mechanism, the woman redirects her negative feelings about losing her dog into a positive, constructive activity.
Okay, so did you guys get to hear it? Yeah? Okay, that's great. That's a relief. Okay, so then the question is this one. Using points and examples from the talk, describe 2 defense mechanisms mentioned by the professor. So you already have the topic in here, defense mechanisms. Okay, so what we're gonna do now is I'll give you all 30 seconds to prepare your response, organize your thoughts, and then we'll try it. So go ahead. Okay. So anyone wants to try, wants to go first? I'm gonna leave the template here. You wanna do it, David?
Yes, I do.
Okay, nice. So then you can start now.
The lecture is about defense mechanisms. These are ways to avoid psychological pain. The professor illustrates this with the example of a woman whose pet dog runs away. The first described defense mechanism is fantasy. When using fantasy, the woman imagines a happy story where a family finds the dog and feeds it, or the dog starts its own family. The second described defense mechanism is sublimation. Sublimation is about turning negative emotions into something useful, like starting a new dog training center in order to help people to deal with their dogs and keeping them from running away.
Okay, so perfect, David. I think that was just perfect. You know, you made it on time, you kept the structure, you used the transitions and everything. And one thing I liked about your response that I think we can all take is you notice how David basically at the beginning, he said, you know, he explained what the example was about. And that's a really good strategy whenever the example is the same for both subtopics, you can do that for sure. So that way you don't have to explain it all over again. You know, if you say the lecture is about defense mechanisms, the professor illustrates this with the example of a woman who loses her dog. So then you don't have to all over again, explain what the example is about, and you just directly go to what the woman may do. So that's a great thing to do. Nothing to say really. I would say don't forget the definitions. I think the first one was missing, fantasy, which is very quickly imagining, using your imagination to create a happy story. For instance, the woman may imagine that this happened. So just the definition, maybe don't forget, but everything else, perfect. I think you got the idea. You know already what to do. So great. Okay, who else? Who else wants to go?
I want to try.
Okay, perfect. So you can go ahead now.
The lecture is about defense mechanisms. The professor illustrates this with an example of a pet dog that the woman loses. After introducing the topic, the professor features two mechanisms that people use to protect themselves from pain. To start the lecture, she describes the fantasy, which is when people run away to their imagination. For instance, the woman imagines that the dog have a new family and it's happy and having fun. Then the professor goes on and explain sublimation, which is when people turns a negative feeling in a positive way. To illustrate this, she mentions that the woman might start a dog training school to avoid other people to having the same problem.
Okay, perfect. Again, Karina, that was great, awesome. So nice, you did the same thing. What I liked is that you took less time in the intro. You said, the lecture is about defense mechanisms. And if you realize in this case, the professor was like defining defense mechanisms, but you don't need to do that. So that's great. Okay, nothing to change. What I could tell you, if you want to save some time, so that because I noticed that you went over a bit, you guys can all avoid saying this. It's about you, if you think you're good with time, then you can of course say it because it gives as I was saying, it gives the idea that you're summarizing something and it gives a good transition and everything, but it's not that relevant. So you can always say the lecture is about, and here you would need to use the word to, right? The lecture is about two defense mechanisms. So you're adding that to, you don't have to say that anymore. And then you start to start, the lecture describes fantasy. So great. What I could tell you, Karina, careful with grammar, especially those third person verbs. I think that's the main thing. So for instance, a woman who loses would be, her dog, or a dog that has a family. So just careful with those, especially those irregular plurals like woman, women, or people, person. And yeah, just like tiny details. Okay. Yes, Oshin?
Miss, can I try this question?
Yes, of course. Of course. So you can go ahead now.
Okay. Okay. The lecture is about defense mechanisms. After introducing the topic, the professor mentioned that ¿Puedo empezar de nuevo, por favor?
Okay, yeah. All right, so read out, and there you go.
Okay. The lecture is about defense mechanisms, which they are to protect yourself psychologically from painful emotions. After introducing the topic, the professor mentioned that one example, that a woman who loses her dog, which develops feelings of sadness and a defense mechanism, could be that she imagines a happy history in her mind, and this drives away the pain of the loss. And to start, the lectures describe the sublimations, which is it's different from fantasy because it's not about pretending. For instance, in the same case, the woman, instead of living in fantasy, could attend a dog training school and thus overcome the pain of loss.
Okay, love that "thus" at the end, and thus overcome the pain of loss. That's a really good word to use in this task. Okay, now I think the only problem that you were having is time. You were missing some time, like 10 seconds more. So at the beginning, the same thing for you. Try not to say this one. Just say the lecture is about 2 defense mechanisms. I like that you introduced the example at the beginning. You know, you said the professor illustrates it with the example of a woman losing her dog. Now here, don't forget to use it in the right place. So to start needs to be for the first one. I think in this case, you said it for the second one, and that could be a bit confusing. And don't forget to also mention the term here. So fantasy, you have to mention it here. If you can, I think you did describe what it was, so that's okay. And the example was good as well. So just make sure that you mention the term there, that you use the purpose, the transition in the, in the right place. And what else? And yeah, just mainly careful with the structure. But content was good, grammar was also really good, and also the words that you were using, you know, like that "does" at the end, I like that. So nice. Okay, now. So I was thinking, you guys want to do one more, a different one, or would you like to, or maybe someone else wants to do this one? Because we have like 9 minutes. I think that could be enough. What do you think? Let's do one more. Let me look for another one. I think that can be useful for practice. So, okay. Okay. Okay, so let's listen to this one. Don't forget to take notes, and let's see.
To speak. Listen to part of a lecture in a business class.
People who are likely to buy a company's product are called target customers. And these target customers influence a company's marketing strategy. In order to develop a marketing strategy, a company will look at certain characteristics of the target customers to decide when and where to advertise, so that they'll reach the target customers most effectively. I'd like to talk to you today about 2 characteristics of target customers that can influence marketing strategy, specifically age and geographic location of the target customers. Say a company makes toy cars. Who are its target customers? Kids, right? So if the company wants to make sure its television advertising reaches its target customers, it'd want to advertise during times when kids are actually watching television, like during children's television shows. That way it can make sure that kids see the advertisements. And that way the company would get people in that age group to go buy toy cars, or to ask their parents to buy them at least. Now, another important characteristic to consider is geographic location. Places where the company's target customers live. Think about a company that makes boats. Its target customers are people who own homes near oceans or lakes, places where they can use boats. After all, people who don't live near water don't have much use for boats. So by placing advertisements on signs along the road or on television in cities and towns that are near oceans or lakes, the company would be more likely to reach the target customers for its boats, and sell more of them as a result.
Using points and examples from the lecture, explain how the characteristics of target customers influence marketing strategy for products.
Okay, so now I'll give you all 30 seconds to prepare and let's see who can go after. Okay, so who wants to go before we leave? Anybody who hasn't done it yet would like to try? I don't know, maybe Natalia, would you like to go, or Melissa?
I like to try.
Okay, all right, David. So you can go ahead now.
The lecture is about target customers. According to the professor, target consumers influence the way companies advertise their products. The first factor that influences advertisement is age. As an example, if a company is trying to sell toy cars, they are more likely to advertise this product at the time children watch TV, so they can ask their parents to buy them. On the other hand, the second factor is geographic location. The professor illustrates this with the example of boats. If a company is trying to sell boats, it will advertise them in cities near lakes or seas.
Okay, perfect. Great, awesome. So yeah, nothing to change. Everything was fine. Maybe you were missing a bit of time at the end, but there wasn't anything that we could change. Maybe at the beginning. Just try to hurry up a bit. So, you know, just the lectures target customers or okay, nice. Anybody else before we go would like to try? We still have 2 minutes, so. Okay, guys. So then please practice tomorrow. Try to understand what works for you and to also make some changes. You know, as I was saying, the template you can change it as long as you keep the structure. You can see if you want to change something out of it. That's okay. So any questions before we go now about the class or the task? No? Okay. So please, I just started today's survey. So if you could please answer those 3 questions before you go. Okay. Okay, I think I'm just missing one. I don't know who that could be. Okay, but I think that's okay. Now I got 9 out of 9. All right, perfect. So thank you so much, guys. I'll see you all on Thursday. Have a nice night. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.